The town of Ashwood was the kind of place where secrets didn't stay buried for long, but people still tried to hide them anyway. Nestled between green hills and an endless horizon, it looked peaceful from the outside. Warm houses, smiling faces, Sunday markets. But underneath that calm surface, lives intertwined with quiet guilt, regrets, and choices made in fear. Among them lived Clara Weston, a woman known for her kindness. She worked as a nurse at the local hospital, and everyone admired her for her patience and calm nature. She had that rare ability to make even the coldest hearts feel safe. Yet behind that comforting smile was a secret she carried for over a decade, a secret that wasn't entirely hers, but one she chose to protect. It began 15 years earlier, when Clara was still young, full of energy, and deeply in love with a man named Evan Brooks. He was ambitious, charming, and determined to make something of himself. They dreamed of a simple life together, marriage, children, a little house near the river. But dreams are fragile things when they collide with real life. One night, Evan called Clara in panic. His voice trembled. "Clara, something's happened," he whispered. "I didn't mean to, but I can't undo it." She remembered running through the rain that night, her coat soaked, her heart pounding. She found him near the old quarry, his hands shaking, his clothes dirty. There was a car, wrecked and smoking, down the hill. A man lay motionless inside. Clara froze. She recognized him. It was her colleague from the hospital, Dr. Harlan Pierce, known for his temper and rivalry with Evan. Evan explained it was an accident. They had argued about a research project, and things got heated. He swore he didn't mean to hit him. He ran into the road. "I tried to swerve," Evan said, his eyes wild with guilt. Clara wanted to believe him. She needed to. Together, they made the decision that would haunt both of them forever. They pushed the car deeper into the quarry, making it look like a tragic accident. They wiped their fingerprints, and Clara used her medical knowledge to cover the evidence. The police later called it a fatal crash. Everyone mourned Dr. Pierce. No one suspected a thing. And Clara, terrified but loyal, stood by Evan as he broke down in tears. But guilt has a way of lingering, like smoke that refuses to clear. Evan's career blossomed, but his mind began to crumble. He became distant, erratic. At night, he would wake up screaming. "I see his face," he'd whisper. "He's not gone." Clara tried to hold him together, but the weight of their shared sin crushed their love. Within 2 years, Evan left her, moving to another city. They never spoke again. Still, Clara never told anyone. She stayed in Ashwood, living with the ghost of that night. Every time she heard sirens, she froze. Every time she walked past the hospital, she felt a chill. Her silence was supposed to protect the man she loved, but it ended up chaining her to the past. Years passed. Clara aged gracefully, but her eyes carried a tiredness no sleep could fix. She buried herself in work, helping others, convincing herself that her kindness could balance the wrong she had done. But deep down, she knew life didn't work like that. Then one day, everything began to unravel. It was a rainy Thursday, eerily similar to that night years ago, when a new doctor arrived at the hospital, Dr. Aaron Pierce, the late Harlan Pierce's son. He was polite, intelligent, and eerily familiar. When Clara first saw his name on the staff list, her heart nearly stopped. She thought it was impossible, that fate wouldn't be that cruel. But there he was, young, confident, with his father's same sharp eyes. And when he shook Clara's hand, she felt her pulse quicken. Did he know? Could he sense it? At first, nothing happened. Aaron seemed genuinely kind. He admired Clara, even looked up to her as a mentor. "My father used to speak about the hospital all the time," he said once. "I was just a kid, but I remember him talking about you. Said you were one of the good ones." Clara smiled faintly, her stomach twisting. One of the good ones. The irony made her want to scream. Weeks turned into months, and the unease grew. Aaron began asking quiet questions about his father's accident. It never made sense. He told Clara one night after their shift. "The crash site reports. They don't match up with the autopsy. I think someone covered something up." Clara's world tilted. She tried to deflect, to calm him down. "Sometimes answers don't bring peace, Aaron. Maybe it's better not to know." He studied her, confused by the sadness in her tone. "You sound like you know something," he said softly. That night, Clara sat in her apartment, staring at an old box hidden in her closet. Inside were the things she had kept from that night: an old scarf, a photo of her and Evan, a torn medical report she never filed. For years, she couldn't bring herself to throw them away. Now, it felt like those objects were mocking her. Her phone buzzed. A message from Evan. After more than 10 years of silence. Evan, we need to talk. It's about him. Clara's hands trembled. She didn't know whether to reply. But something deep inside told her that running wasn't an option anymore. The next evening, they met in an empty cafe on the edge of town. Evan looked older, gray hair, sunken eyes. The confident man she once loved was gone. He's investigating, Evan said without greeting. Pierce's son. He's getting close. Clara swallowed hard. You knew he'd come someday. Evan shook his head. We can't let this destroy everything we built. I have a life now, Clara. A family. If he finds out. She interrupted, her voice trembling. And what about his family, Evan? What about the life we destroyed? He looked at her, eyes cold. You made your choice that night, too. For the first time in years, Clara felt the anger rise. I made it for you. To save you. Evan leaned back, defeated. Then maybe that was your mistake. They sat in silence. The rain tapped against the windows, just like it had the night of the accident. Clara realized she had spent 15 years protecting a man who no longer cared, keeping a lie alive while her own soul decayed. When she returned home that night, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a single line written in neat handwriting. I know the truth about my father. Erin, her knees went weak. The room spun. For years, she had waited for karma to come, and now, it was standing right at her doorstep. Clara didn't sleep that night. She sat on her couch, the note trembling in her hands as thunder rolled in the distance. Every shadow in her apartment seemed to whisper her name. Every sound, the ticking clock, the creak of the floorboards, felt like a countdown to the inevitable. She told herself it might not be him, that maybe it was a cruel prank. But deep down, she knew Erin Pierce had finally uncovered the truth. By morning, her eyes were swollen and red. She went to work anyway, because routine was the only thing keeping her sane. When she entered the hospital, the air felt heavier. People greeted her, smiled politely, but Clara barely heard them. Her gaze instinctively searched for Erin, yet she also dreaded seeing him. She found him in the corridor outside the lab, looking over patient files. He turned, as if sensing her presence. Their eyes met, and for a second, the world stopped. Good morning, he said evenly. His voice carried no warmth. Clara forced a smile. Morning. I left something for you last night, he added quietly. Her throat went dry. I saw. He nodded. Then you know why we need to talk. They went into an empty office, the air between them thick with tension. Erin closed the door behind him. His expression was calm, but his eyes, those piercing gray eyes that mirrored his father's, were burning with restrained fury. I found the police report, he began. Then the medical file, the one that was edited. The injuries on my father didn't match the crash pattern. Clara looked down. Erin, don't, he said sharply. Just tell me the truth. Were you there? She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Years of silence had sealed her throat. She wanted to confess, to beg for forgiveness, but the words felt like shards of glass cutting her from the inside. Finally, she whispered, yes. Erin froze. His face went pale. You were there? When he died. Tears filled her eyes. It was an accident, Erin. He ran into the road. We didn't mean to hurt him. His voice cracked. So there was someone else. Who? She hesitated. Her mind screamed not to say Evan's name, but the truth was already bleeding through. Evan Brooks, she murmured. Erin exhaled sharply, his hands trembling. My father and Brooks worked together. He ruined my father's career. And you helped him cover it up? Clara stepped closer. I was young. I loved him. I thought I was protecting him. Erin shook his head, pacing. You protected a murderer. He's not. She stopped herself. He wasn't trying to kill him. It went wrong. Please, Erin, I've lived with this guilt for 15 years. Not a day passes that I don't think about your father. But Erin's pain was raw, untamed. You think your guilt changes anything? My father died alone in a ditch, while you both went home and pretended it never happened. She wanted to explain, to tell him how the memory had devoured her life, how every act of kindness since then was a desperate attempt at redemption. But nothing she could say would erase the fact that she chose silence when the truth mattered most. Erin's voice broke. Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up, not knowing why your father never came home? My mother died blaming herself. She thought he was drunk. She thought she drove him away. Clara's tears fell freely now. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring him back, he said coldly. He turned and walked out, leaving her standing alone, broken, and gasping for air. For the next few days, Clara lived in quiet terror. Aaron avoided her at work. Word spread that he was digging into old files, questioning retired officers. She knew it was only a matter of time before Evan's name surfaced. She called him. He didn't answer. When she finally drove to his house, a neat white home at the edge of town, his wife opened the door. He's not here, the woman said politely. Is something wrong? Clara shook her head. Just tell him Clara stopped by. Driving home, Clara felt the familiar weight of helplessness. For years, she had convinced herself that her silence protected everyone. Now it was destroying everything she had left. That evening, a message arrived on her phone. It was from Aaron. Aaron, meet me tomorrow. The quarry. Noon. Her heart sank. The quarry, the place where it all began. The next day, clouds hung low and heavy. The air smelled of rain and memory. Clara drove slowly, each turn of the wheel pulling her deeper into the past. The road to the quarry hadn't changed. The same cracked stones, the same rusted guardrail. Aaron was already there, standing near the edge. He looked older somehow, like he had aged years overnight. She approached carefully. You wanted to see me. He didn't turn. I found the rest of it. The surveillance footage from the gas station near here. You were both caught that night, just faintly, in the rain. Clara closed her eyes. It was over. I didn't come here to threaten you, Aaron continued. I came here because I needed to see it, the place where my father died. I thought maybe if I stood here, I'd understand. She stepped beside him, the wind tugging at her coat. You deserve the truth, she said softly. Your father didn't deserve what happened. I thought I could live with it, but it's been eating me alive. Every patient I've saved was an apology that never reached him. Aaron's eyes glistened. Then why didn't you tell the truth? Because I was afraid, she whispered. Afraid to lose the man I loved. Afraid of what people would think. Afraid to face what I had done. But fear doesn't erase guilt. It just traps you inside it. He looked at her then, truly looked. Do you still love him? I don't even know who he is anymore, she said. Maybe I never did. They stood in silence for a long time. Finally, Aaron said, You're going to tell the police. She nodded. Yes, it's time. But Aaron's expression shifted. There was something else behind his calmness, something darker. You won't have to, he said quietly. He already did. Clara blinked. Evan. Aaron nodded. He turned himself in this morning. He confessed everything. Her knees buckled. Oh my God. He said you weren't responsible, that you wanted to call the police, but he stopped you. He took the blame for it all. Tears flooded her eyes. Why would he? Aaron looked out toward the quarry. Maybe he finally saw what guilt does to people. Or maybe he realized that karma always comes back, no matter how long it takes. Over the next few weeks, the truth spread across Ashwood like wildfire. The once quiet town buzzed with gossip and shock. News headlines painted Evan as a fallen man, a brilliant researcher undone by one fatal mistake. Clara was suspended from the hospital pending investigation. Some colleagues defended her, saying she'd spent years healing others. Others called her a hypocrite. Through it all, Aaron remained distant. He testified in court, calm and composed, but when Clara tried to speak to him afterward, he walked away without a word. Evan received a prison sentence, 8 years for manslaughter, reduced for voluntary confession. Clara didn't attend the sentencing. She couldn't. Instead, she stood alone by the river that night, watching the water ripple beneath the moonlight. The world felt heavier, yet strangely clearer. For the first time in 15 years, she had no more lies to protect, no more masks to wear. But the hardest part was still ahead, learning how to forgive herself. Weeks turned into months. Clara moved out of town, taking a small job at a rural clinic. The air there was clean, the people quiet. They didn't know her past, and she didn't offer it. Sometimes she still dreamed of Harlan Pierce, his lifeless face in the rain, the flash of headlights, the sound of Evan's voice begging her to help. But in those dreams now, she didn't hide. She stayed, knelt beside him, and whispered, I'm sorry. One morning, she received a letter with no return address. Inside was a short note in neat handwriting. He wouldn't have wanted hate to live forever. I hope you find peace. AP. She pressed the paper to her heart and cried. Not from pain this time, but from release. For years, she believed that silence was mercy. But now she understood it was just another kind of cruelty. Truth doesn't destroy people. It frees them, even if it costs everything. And so Clara Weston began to live again, not as the woman who kept a secret, but as the one who finally let it go. Winter came early that year. Frost clung to the window panes of the clinic where Clara worked. And every morning, she'd walk through fields glazed in white, her breath a cloud against the dawn. Life had settled into a kind of quiet rhythm. Patients came and went, days folded into weeks, and though her hands still healed others, she often wondered if her soul would ever feel whole again. The letter from Aaron stayed tucked in her wallet. She reread it sometimes when doubt crept in. He wouldn't have wanted hate to live forever. I hope you find peace. Each time, the words softened something inside her. Yet peace, she discovered, wasn't something that simply arrived. It had to be chosen again and again. Even when the past kept whispering your name. One gray morning, as snow began to fall, she received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was formal but gentle. Miss Weston? This is Officer Daly from the State Correctional Facility. Mr. Brooks has requested to see you. Clara's stomach twisted. It had been nearly a year since Evan's confession. She hadn't written, hadn't visited. Part of her believed he didn't want her to. Did he say why? She asked quietly. No, ma'am. But he said it was important. He's being transferred to a different facility next week. Clara hesitated. Tell him I'll come tomorrow. The next day, she drove through a maze of frozen fields, the pale winter light stretching across the horizon. The prison loomed ahead, gray and severe against the snow. As she walked through the gates, a guard led her down a sterile hallway lined with flickering lights. When she entered the visiting room, Evan was already there. He looked older, thinner. The confident man she once knew had been replaced by someone humbled, almost ghost-like. Clara, he said, his voice rough with emotion. She sat down across from him, her hands trembling slightly. Hello, Evan. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy, but not the same kind of silence that had once bound them in lies. This one carried truth, unspoken but known. You look better, he finally said. She gave a faint smile. I work at a small clinic now. It's quiet, peaceful. He nodded. You always wanted peace. They both laughed softly, the sound brittle and sad. After a pause, Clara asked, Why did you call me? Evan leaned back, his gaze distant. Because I couldn't leave without saying what I should have said years ago. You tried to stop me that night. I didn't listen. I was angry, reckless. I thought I was protecting my pride. But pride kills more than it saves. Clara swallowed hard. We both made choices we regret. No, he said, shaking his head. You suffered for mine. I see that now. Prison gives you a lot of time to think. I used to wake up every night hearing the crash again, seeing his face. But lately, I've started to dream of you. Not the night of the accident, but before that. When you still smiled. Tears filled her eyes. That girl doesn't exist anymore. Maybe not, he said softly. But the woman sitting in front of me, she's stronger than both of us ever were. You faced what I couldn't. Clara looked down. Aaron hates me. I can't blame him. Evan sighed. He doesn't hate you, Clara. I met him. Her head snapped up. You what? He came here a few months ago, Evan said. Wanted to look me in the eye. I thought he'd kill me with his words. But he just asked one thing. If I'd do it differently. What did you say? I said yes. Without hesitation. Clara nodded slowly. What did he do? He said, Then that's all I needed to hear. Then he left. A silence hung between them again, but this time it felt lighter. The weight of unspoken guilt had begun to shift into something else, something almost like acceptance. I wanted to hate you, Evan admitted quietly. When the police came, when they took me away, I kept telling myself you betrayed me. But I see now, you set me free. You gave me a chance to stop running. That's something I never had the courage to do myself. Clara wiped her tears. I never wanted to destroy you, Evan. I just couldn't keep living with the lie. He nodded, his eyes wet. You did the right thing. I hope someday you believe that. When their time was up, a guard announced it softly. Evan stood. Take care of yourself, Clara. She stood too, hesitating for a moment before stepping forward and taking his hand through the cold glass divider. You too, she whispered. He smiled faintly. The first real smile she'd seen from him in years. Then he turned and walked away. As she left the prison, the snow had stopped falling. The air was cold but still, the sky clearing just enough to reveal a thin band of pale blue on the horizon. For the first time in years, she felt as if she could breathe again. Months passed. Spring returned, cautious and tender. Flowers began to bloom outside the clinic, and the air filled with the sound of birdsong. Clara spent her days helping the sick, mentoring young nurses, and rediscovering small joys she'd forgotten existed. The warmth of sunlight through a window, the laughter of children in the waiting room, the peace of solitude without shame. Then, one afternoon, she received another letter. This one was longer, and when she opened it, she recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Aaron. Clara, I thought I was done with the past. But the truth is, forgiveness doesn't come in one moment. It comes in pieces, like waves returning to the shore. When my father died, I wanted someone to pay. When I found out what happened, I wanted you both to suffer. But seeing you at the hearing, seeing how broken you looked, I realized something my father used to say. Hurt people. Hurt people. I've spent so long carrying his pain that I forgot he was a man who believed in second chances. I think he'd want me to forgive you. I don't know if we'll ever be friends, but I don't hate you anymore. Take care of yourself. Live your life. Aaron, Clara held the letter against her chest and cried, not from guilt this time, but from the overwhelming grace of being forgiven. A few weeks later, she visited the quarry for the first time since that terrible day. The air was still, the water shimmering in the sunlight. She brought wildflowers from her garden and laid them by the edge, whispering a quiet prayer. For you, Mr. Pierce, she said softly, and for the girl I used to be. The breeze carried her words away, and for a fleeting moment, she thought she heard an echo, not of accusation, but of peace. Years passed. Evan served his sentence and was released early for good behavior. He never returned to Ashwood, choosing instead to work at a community program for ex-convicts. He and Clara exchanged a few letters, short, kind, and honest. There was no romance left, only mutual understanding, the kind that comes from surviving the same storm. Aaron went on to direct the research foundation his father once dreamed of creating. His work focused on medical ethics and patient trust, ensuring that no one's silence would ever bury the truth again. As for Clara, she remained in the countryside. Her hair turned silver, her hands lined with age, but her heart grew lighter with every passing year. People came to her not just for healing, but for wisdom. They said she had a way of listening, of really listening, that made them feel seen. And whenever someone came to her burdened by guilt, she would say, gently, truth hurts, yes, but lies destroy. And forgiveness, whether it's for others or yourself, isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about letting life begin again. One summer evening, decades after it all began, Clara sat on her porch watching the sunset bleed across the sky. The light turned golden, then soft pink, then deep violet. She thought of Aaron, of Evan, of the man who died that rainy night, and realized they were all bound by the same fragile truth. That pain, no matter how deep, doesn't have to define a life. She closed her eyes, breathing in the scent of the wildflowers that grew by her steps. A calm, steady peace settled over her, not the kind she had once begged for, but the kind she had earned. And as the last light faded, she whispered, "Thank you for the lesson." The wind stirred gently in response, like the world itself was nodding back, because in the end, karma hadn't come to punish her. It had come to teach her that every lie demands truth, every wound demands healing, and every soul, no matter how lost, can find its way home.